Clarity is achieved through intense focus and a commitment to a perceived or not yet paid vision you set out for yourself. However, it also is important to note that sometimes the guidance and wisdom of others will be a tremendous asset in order to accomplish this very goal. According to my friends over at Statistics Canada, they report that 28% of Canadians believe that their mental health affects their daily function. 40% say that it affects their work performance or how they perform academically. Another 33% say that it affects their social activities or ability to leisure, and 36% finally say it can alter the way they feel about their home and family life. For my friend Kyle Smith, this is something that he works on each and every day. As a clarity consultant, he's concerned with helping his clients unlock the power of words and stories, coupled with breath work. Smith says that it's capable to get unstuck, to celebrate life's wins, and pursue your goals. He's the creator of Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience. It's all in an effort to help wellness seekers on a road to a better life through a combination of proven holistic techniques, which encompass storywork and breathwork to ultimately come up with a concept. And Smith joined me this week from a snowy Edmonton to give me the lowdown on how we can use this innovative practice to live better lives. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. According to Mental Health Research Canada, more than 1 in 2, 52% of Canadians say that they're struggling with their mental health and finding the resources necessary which they need to address their concerns. Meanwhile, this is only one half of the 17% of Canadians who are currently accessing the mental health resources they need to thrive and address the issues surrounding their blockages. Therefore, I wanted to start my conversation with Smith by asking him the keys to eliminating mental blocks and getting us in the right state of mind.
Well, going into the words and the stories and the breath that we carry. And so when we want to experience more openness, more clear headedness, we go into the mind to declutter it. We declutter the mind so that we make room to throw a party. And that makes it easy for us to be able to think clearly, think openly without these moments in time, these experiences, these stories coming up and acting as a weight, preventing us from progressing forward.
Absolutely. And my friend, I know that you've developed a practice called NLSE, which is short for Linguistic Somatic Experience, my friend. So I'm wondering if you could tell me about it and how it works, my friend.
Yeah, sure. So, Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience, NLSE, is a practice I developed over the last couple of years, and it works as a mindset gym for mental fitness. So, breaking down the words, it starts with neuro, meaning of the mind, and mindset in particular. And I share with the people that I work with that mindset, the definition of mindset is the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. So we can have a good opinion or a lesser opinion of ourselves and we can adjust accordingly. The importance of having this definition is that we're able to compare how we feel to something that's practical. We know when we feel higher and we know when we feel lesser, and so we can adjust. It also goes into the nervous system of the body, so the nerves, and it, which is also part of what sends signals all through our body. And this is where we hold emotions and feelings and information that is sent all around the bodies through this nervous system. And then going into the language, the linguistics, what we say, think, and write, and how we breathe, because the breath is the language of the body. And with the first ones, words, stories, and breath, or what we say, think, and write. The thing that's important about words is that there's magic behind them. We spell these characters together, and there's a word. It's abracadabra. It's a magical word. Have you heard it before?
I have, yeah.
When I say abracadabra, what do you think of?
Magic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Abracadabra is a very old language. It's Aramaic. And translated to English, it's with my words I create, with my words I influence. And so the words that we say, speak, or say, think, and write can influence our reality and how we experience life to a great degree. And the quality of the words that we speak also impacts the quality of our thoughts. Similar to food, where there's macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins, the quality of the food that we eat is going to impact the quality of the physical body. The words work as invisible macronutrients of the mind. When we feed our mind quality words, we have quality thoughts. When we feed our mind not so good words, we're not going to have good thoughts. And so when we're mindful and thinking about our thinking and intentional about the words that we use, then we feel more open, more less pressure, less obligation, less fear, less daunting experience in general. And then going to the why the breath is a language. If we're breathing high and tight in our chest, we're good to fight. If we're breathing low and slow in our belly, we're good to flow. And so the breath works as a way for us to recognize when our body is agitated or calm. And so if we're sitting down, hanging out with a bunch of people that we're enjoying and we're having a good time and we're breathing high and tight, then we can think, oh, okay, where's that coming from? Well, I'm feeling really good right now. I'm not concerned. Work and breath work. And when we get the breath involved, then we're having a conversation with our body and our brain. It's a two-way street. And so we calm the body down so that we can be present and feel stable. And like we have a foundation to build on. And then the somatic, so that's the physical part. And then there's the somatic where it's of the physical body, sort of what we move our fingers with and what we speak and everything like that. And then there's the emotional body, there's the feelings. And so the physical body is a passive process. We don't get involved with our heartbeat. We don't get involved with our digestion. It does it automatically. We're not actively doing it. We cut our finger, it knows how to heal itself over time. Our emotional body our feels, emotion, energy in motion, the emotional body, it's an active process. So that's why we can experience a story or a moment in time from our past and pull it into the present and feel those feels, because the emotional body is timeless. It's not stuck to time. And for that, we actively participate in the processing of those unmetabolized emotions, of those unprocessed emotions. And that's where we get to have a balance between the physical and the emotional. And experience means that it happens real time. It's something that people feel in the moment. And that's the practice.
Well, I appreciate that, my friend, and I wanted to know from you specifically, my friend, how does your upbringing and interest in life sort of inform the work that you do today, my friend? Why is this work important to you?
The work is very important to me because I went, I turned my problems into passions. I did not like who I was about 9 years ago. I didn't like the character I was. I didn't have much respect, compassion, love. I did not trust myself. I didn't know how consistent or competent I was. And I wanted to make a change. So I made a decision to make a pivot in my life. And through the last 9 years, I've tried a couple of ways to be able to explore to find what can work. And through that 9 years, I found that breathwork and storywork, both of those combined, helped me the most in changing my stories, changing my narratives, changing how I see the world and see myself. And I wanted to take that and give it to others. So they didn't have to do 9 years of figuring it out. It's already figured out.
Yeah, and Kyle, talk about, I'm a huge believer in sort of describing and writing your own journey, my friend, and talk to me about the process of discovery because I think it's an individual practice for all of us, but I also think there has to be a level of internal motivation to be on a journey of self-discovery, my friend. So, talk to me about the importance of self-reflection and what that means to you, my friend.
Totally. And you're very right. Uh, from the people that I've worked with, there's three things that they have in common that resonate the most. And they have a sincere desire to change. They really want to make change. They have an openness to explore, and they're okay with testing a pain threshold. Because in order to reflect, it's going to require us facing ourselves. And people are fearful of that, fearful of what they could be in either a positive or negative light, fearful of a whole bunch of things, fearful of seeing the truth, seeing themselves. And when you have the three, then reflection becomes easy. And the way I like to work with reflection is to get people thinking about their thinking rather than thinking about themselves. And that way we can break different ideas down and declutter, like I mentioned before. And I find that the more that we remove, the more truth comes to the surface, the more accuracy comes to the surface. So I think that reflection uh, could be experienced while exploring the stories that we have to write down or the moments in time to explore or dreams even.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kyle, I want to explore the role that cannabis has with this practice because, depending on what walk of life you come from, cannabis is certainly growing in popularity. So I'm curious to get your thoughts as to why that is and how it relates to the practice that you engage in, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Totally. So NLSE, I designed it and developed it so that it could work with other practices. So you can do cannabis connected NLSE, you can do sound healing NLSE, you can do therapy plus NLSE, like with a practitioner or a therapist. And so how cannabis ties into it is being able to utilize two different tools to supercharge an experience. So when there's a theme, and I don't do cannabis connected sessions all the time. It's mostly without. However, when there is the ones, or if I'm working with a participant that wants to uh, practice their plant medicines while on the session, that's totally cool too. It's a plant-friendly environment, and uh, and what the cannabis does is it's able to. We'll start with one thing. The cannabis plant itself is a feminine plant. You can only get the THC and the part that we can feel the effects from the female plant. There's a male and female plant, which that's unique among plants to actually have two different types. And so when you separate the female and male plants, the male plants don't pollinate the female plants, and that's where we get the buds that we can consume, that we can smoke or turn into butter and ingest. Um, and it's a warm, it's a warm, like compassionate, reflection oriented uh, plant. Ideation, creativity, and what it does is it puts us into a gamma state because there's different states of conscious or no, I don't think it's consciousness on this one. But there's alpha, beta, theta, and then there's gamma. And for gamma, it puts us into a calm state that makes it so that we're able to receive or receptive of information. We just have an more open mind. So when we're taking that open-mindedness, then we're using the breath and getting into the body, then you feel it all through. And then we get to go into the stories and some ideas we can explore that we may not have had prior. It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kyle, I wanted to ask you about erasing the victim mentality. I know I asked you earlier about eliminating mental blockages and getting people unstuck that way. And, I'm a huge believer in that excuses are a deterrent to progress, but I realize that not all people can come to that conclusion without some training and guidance, my friend. So let's talk about getting people unstuck and ways that they can cope through a victim mentality, my friend, to come out the other side. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, that's cool. That's a very cool question. And I like how what you said about eliminate or removing blockages. So with the victim mentality, it's not a blockage. It's a set of characteristics that we've adopted. So I have a definition for this. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So the victim mentality, similar to its opposite, the victor mentality, is an acquired personality trait. It's something that we have developed either consciously or unconsciously over time. And easiest example to think of is when the whole world is to blame for the person's circumstances, rather than being the victor mentality, which they understand that they are the common denominator. They're the common point in all of their problems. That's the main difference between the victim mentality and the victor mentality is responsibility, the ability to respond. And when we carry that blanket of that victim mentality, until like what you said, until we're introduced to it or we see something that is different, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's another option. I don't have to stay this way if I don't want to. And then people can go with it and pursue it, removing that victim mentality. And there are some people, the ones that don't have a sincere desire to change, they prefer to have the victim mentality because it serves them somehow. They get something from it. It could be sympathy, it could be pity, it could be affirmation, it could be encouragement, it could be something that they receive in order to better their life. They see the victim mentality as something useful for getting what they want. And so some folks, not all folks. Most folks are more on the I want to change. I'll say that for sure. And so it goes from figuring out, okay, the victim mentality. Who is the inner rival? Who is my rival within me? My dark wolf, the little devil on my shoulder, and who is the role model within me? Who is the person I want to aspire to be? Who is the person that I'm encouraged by? And that's the victim and the victor. That's the rival and the role model. That is the devil and the angel. That is the dark wolf and the light wolf. It's the inner conflict that every human being experiences is this battle between these two archetypes, these two types of individuals that one, the victim mentality rival wants us to stay exactly where we are, while the rival, the victor mentality, that's a place for us to pursue to become. And so to alleviate, to remove the victim mentality is to create a new reference point to where you want to accomplish something.
Well, I appreciate that explanation, my friend. And, my friend, as an old sports journalist, Kyle, always enjoy the art of storytelling, my friend. And I know that you believe that storytelling and the words that we use are also connected to our mindset of reality, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can dive into that this morning, my friend.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, when I say stories, it includes past experiences, both ones that are joyful and ones that are traumatic. It could be dreams. It could be the future. Uh, it could be, like I said, getting unstuck. It could be celebrating the wins and progress of ourselves and others. And it could be used for goal setting and creating targets that inspire us and create an action proneness within us. And so when we take all these words and we put them together, we create a story. This story can work as a reference point for how we see the world and ourselves. And when we're kids, we absorb stories until about the age of 7 and 8. That's when we start to develop our own consciousness, our own sense of identity, like our own identity. We're no longer just our like a kid. And so during this time, we're listening and we're taking in these stories from other people, parents, professors, principals, politicians, priests, preachers, anything. It's just stories coming in. And these stories will influence how we behave and the decisions we make. And many stories we have unconsciously adopted from others, while we can also consciously adopt from others. And there's stories that can harm us, and there's stories that can help us. And so going into a story, let's say, for example, it's a traumatic one where it has a high intensity, a large amount of emotion, and that's an indicator that's still trapped in the nervous system, that's still trapped in the body. So it hasn't been actively processed. Because on the other end of working through the stories, you can read the same story and not have any feels to it at all, or at least a very large amount of it decreased, and you feel a sense of, okay, I'm good. So you own the story rather than have the story own you. And when we go into the stories and we go through a 4-step process for it, and I only explore stories that someone's open to exploring. I don't explore stories that someone doesn't want to go into. I cannot be paid $1 million to go into a story someone doesn't want to do. And so when we go into the stories, when we go through the steps and we breathe and read and we're able to push those feels and those emotions out, then we're able to figure out which stories we want to have for ourselves. And we write our own personal lore, our own personal manifesto, and the meaning that we want to have for our life. So it's a process where it decreases the intense feels, it flows through, and then it just opens up opportunity. And when we have stories that go from lead stories or harmful stories, and we turn them into golden stories, what happens is we're able to feel a difference in the body. We're able to see real change and experience it real time. And this has a positive impact on how we see ourselves. Because what I like to ask at the end of the steps is what does the story mean to you? What does the story mean about you? And so when people get to make their own meaning, and realistically, people don't have to make their own meaning on anything. However, I will say, if we don't create our own meaning, we will be adopting someone else's meaning. So I think it's in our best interest to create our own meaning to a story so that we encourage ourselves. And as we do this, our mindset increases. We feel better about ourselves. We recognize that we are who we say we are. We recognize that we're making progress, we're developing competence, we're more decisive, we're able to trust ourselves, and we're able to inspire ourselves. And that's how it all ties in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, I wanted to also ask you about how we get over the fear of resistance in life. Things and adversity will always strike, my friend. But if you're afraid to take the leap of sort of opportunity of risk,
Mhm.
I don't think you can live a fulfilled lifestyle. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how we can overcome the fear of the resistance to change. What are your thoughts there?
Mm. I, I'll change up the wording a little bit where I think of resistance as the symptom of fear, self sabotage, rejection, and failure. So we fear those four things. So our body increases intensity, and that is where resistance comes in. There's two parts for this one, where one, figure out what the fearful, what is the fear? So where's that resistance from? What is it that you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And do you have a story from your past that is working as the do you have a story in the past that works as the inspiration for your resistance in the present? And so then when we go into one of those four things where that produces resistance and we find the story in one of those, then we can get to the main point where it's getting into the feel of the person in their experience, being able to flesh that out. And then what we do is we come up with a future frame of either the past, present, and future, where the person's writing to the future. They're not writing to the past in this one. They're writing to the future, and they're either going over writing it down as if they are pursuing it, as if they're presently doing it, or as if they came out the other side having already done it. And what that does is that it shows the individual that there's a different frame because it's not unknown. We have created something. And so when we have created what can happen, because our words are of great influence, then we feel more comfortable being able to do the thing. So resistance is removing whatever that fear, that rejection, that self sabotage, which I also call procrastination, which I also define as the active participation in preventing our own progress, and then failure, and then being able to create something, a different reality, a different frame of seeing things. And that's how I would just, that's the process where it would be decreasing resistance for folks to be able to pursue their goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I wanted to ask you about your sort of definition of the concept of resilience and how resilience can help us live a more fulfilled lifestyle. What are your thoughts there?
Mm, I really like that question. Resilience to me is an equation, and it is how'd it go? It was suffering plus suffering plus purpose equals resilience. So when we're and suffering sounds heavy, but it's lighter. When we dive into that resistance, that is a form of suffering. When we have a purpose behind the suffering, like we have an intention, I want to go through this so that I can get that. And I know if I don't do this, I'm not going to get that, and I want that more than I want to avoid this. And so when we go into that purpose and we understand why we want to do the thing we want to do and we have an intention behind it, then we can go into that that quotey fingers suffering and be able to get to the other side. And because of this, because resilience is not feeling, it is a practice. We practice being resilient. And other people can say, oh, that person's resilient. There's no feeling to resilience. Resilience is just being able to do the hard stuff that you don't want to do in order to get what you want and being okay with it and doing it as if you love it.
Yeah, and I also know that you work with people to sort of eliminate their self-limiting beliefs and really put them on a path where they have a different pattern of thinking and get rid of their destructive patterns in life. So I'm curious when we talk about getting rid of self-limiting beliefs and really getting that clarity of purpose. What does that mean to you, Kyle? What are your thoughts there?
I like that. I would actually take self-limiting beliefs away and I would just call them limiting beliefs because I think the limiting beliefs would be the same whether it's the self or someone else. So I think it makes more sense just to say whereas limiting beliefs. And for limiting beliefs, I believe that limiting beliefs are a side effect of not doing enough of the work. Because if we're doing enough of the work, then we see that we are practicing, that we are consistent, we are competent, and the limiting beliefs that we put there are are lies because we're showing our work. We're doing the opposite. We're not limiting ourselves. So it's not the beliefs because the beliefs are built off of what we do. And so it's not that we become, it's not that we're confident first and then we do the things. We become competent in it and then we feel confidence as a side effect. Confidence is a symptom of competence. And the more that we do do things and work towards the goals and the progress and do the work, whatever that work may look like, then limiting beliefs can actually just go away.
Yeah, and I know when we talk about emphasizing the importance of language specifically, I know you touched on it earlier, but I want to drill down on the whole idea of language and communicating and how it helps us remain focused on what matters. So I'm curious, how do we use language as a superpower, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Mm. Ooh, I like it. So something that I would immediately go with this one is when we're thinking about our thinking, we can have soft talk or solid talk. And soft talk is unclear, ambiguous, indecisive. There's often a question mark at the there's like you can follow it up with a question afterwards. Solid talk is decisive, clear, and there's no ambiguity. It's just open, open. Now, the difference between what it looks like, an example, for soft talk, I might make it to the dinner for 5 p.m. I might make it to the dinner, or I might make it to the party for, yeah, I'll go with party. I might make it to the party for 5 p.m. I could make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm probably going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I could make it to the party for 5 p.m. I should make it to the party for 5 p.m. All of these can have a question. Are you making it to the party for 5 p.m.? It's a yes or no question, right? And so when we remove the probably, could, should, might, kinda, when we start removing those words, those filler words, those soft talk words, then we have I'm going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm not going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm undecided if I'm going to the party for 5 p.m. So we have clear options. We can say yes, no, and I'll get back to you, or undecided. And when we remove the soft talk and we have solid talk, then it's simple, it's clear, and it's able to it that's a moment where we're able to practice our decision making. Because I could say you, I might be able to make it on the podcast for 7:30, or I'm going to make it to the podcast for 7:30. And that's those feel different. And when we make the decision, and each of those moments where we get to remove soft talk and make a decision, yes or no, or undecided, and then I'll get back to you, yes or no, what it does is it microdoses decision making. We make a bunch of small decisions over time. And what we do is we develop competence in our decision making abilities, in our decision making skills. And when we're able to make decisions, we feel good about ourselves because we are not depending on the external world to make a decision for us. We feel we are capable of making decisions. And when we make those small decisions, those compound and build up to when we are able to make big decisions and we can trust ourselves. We have no limiting beliefs because we've made so many decisions that worked in our favor that we're feeling damn good about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, you brought up the idea of making decisions, and I think one of the biggest decisions, one of the biggest decisions I think we all make in life is our ability to form relationships and stronger and healthier relationships, my friend. And I'm curious to get your feedback and perspective on the whole concept of how our decision making can help us form stronger and loving relationships. What are your thoughts there?
Ooh. Uh, I think that decision making can help with building loving relationships because there is honesty with decision making. Uh, with the soft talk, when we're indecisive, then that's not a comfortable place. We don't like to be soft talked to, and we soft talk to others. And if someone's wanting to do something and you say, I might be able to do that, I could do that, I should do that, if we're using those, then it's hard for another person to trust us if we struggle to trust us. And I believe that the relationships and the people outside of us are a reflection of the relationship that we have inside of us. And so we're going to treat people around us very similarly to how we treat ourselves, internally at least. We can fake it till we make it and treat people around us however we wish in a certain way. However, that's disingenuous. I think that's dishonesty. And the thing with dishonesty and falsehoods and all that stuff is that it always comes out. And along with that, if it doesn't come out, then it's keeping things all lined up. I don't think that that's very fulfilling, though. It's not, it doesn't feel good. And when we're truthful and honest with ourselves by being able to figure out what's this and that, and then also being able to be honest with ourselves, trust ourselves, then it becomes easier for us to trust others because we see what trust looks like, or we see what distrust looks like. We can, the very things that we can see in others are things that we can very well see in ourselves. And so I think that that's how decision making can improve communication, and communication can improve uh, relationships as well. Because I find that a really good sign for myself, at least, that there's a solid relationship is being able to ask or say things back and forth without trying to, of course, with good intentions, without trying to ask questions or sneak around the thing that you want to talk about or you want to do. Hey, would you maybe be down to go hang out on Friday? Hey, do you have time on Friday to go hang out? Like those are two different things. And I think that when we get spoken with and speak to with solidity, where we're really solid in our language, what happens is, oh, our whole world gets better. Our whole reality gets better.
Yeah, and Kyle, I wanted to also explore the whole idea of how the expectations that we have in our lives are sort of interconnected to the trust and the belief that we put into our own capabilities, my friend. So, how do you think trust and sort of the expectations of accomplishment are interconnected? What are your thoughts there?
Ooh. Well, I think that a couple parts on this one actually. You popped up a couple neat ones. Something I think with expectations is adjusting them is very important. Adjusting expectations is very important because I believe that some folks they may understand that what they want to do is difficult. However, they hold the expectation that it's going to happen quickly. That doesn't make sense. And the person may find themselves suffering because of it. They may find themselves stuck in the suck because they're not meeting those unrealistic expectations they set for themselves in order to get the thing faster. And so we'll either create indecision, we'll procrastinate, we'll just not do the thing. And yeah, that's not good. We don't feel good about ourselves after that, especially if we want to do something. And so adjusting the expectations to be more appropriate and realistic can actually inspire us because it oftentimes doesn't take as long as we think. And for things that I personally set goals to, I set my expectations for time, for example, to be really long. I set a long time horizon. So rather than thinking of days, weeks, and months, I think in years and decades. And if I have years and decades to do something, I'm going to get it done. That's easy. I'm not going to give myself a month to do something that could take a year. However, I know that if I work towards a year, I can get it done in 6 months. And so that would be 2 months. Let's say it was 3 months longer than my unrealistic expectations. And it was 6 months longer or 6 months less than the expectation I set. And so when we adjust the expectations, then we actually can see things with more honesty and truth rather than us being urgent and trying to fulfill that desire to get things quickly. We work with quality rather than quickness. And then when we work with quality, because slow is smooth and smooth is fast, when we work with that quality, it happens much better with less goof ups and it's more fun. So that's the one way I would go with one part that I would go with adjusting expectation. Another thing to see progress so that expectation is decreased is a frame where you look at the gap, so where you are now to where you want to be, and then you look at the gain. So what have you done in the last day, the last week, the last month, the last year to fill that gap? And many folks are looking more so at the gap. They're seeing all this time that they have to put in to get to this thing. I think that's cool because it's important to look at where we're going. If we're not looking at where we're going and we're walking or we're driving or we're moving somehow, we're going to crash into something. It's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can look at the gain, and the gain is the progress that we've made to be able to close that gap. And when we look at the gain and we're able to celebrate 3 wins of the day and then create 3 wins for tomorrow, what are my sentences, stories, statements that are going to show that I've won today? And finding those wins, not just saying, oh, I didn't do anything. It's like, no, waking up is a win in my books, at least. Because when we go to sleep, we have a 50-50 chance of waking up. And when I get to wake up, I'm pumped. So that's a gain. So that's a win. And so those can go with a whole bunch of other things. So those would be 2 frames for expectations that I would go with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, as you both know, we're both Canadian, my friend. So tell me, what do you think is your favorite part about being Canadian, and what do you think others don't understand about being Canadian, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
You know what? Something that's pretty I was watching a YouTube video the other day, so it's timely. I'll go with 2 points. So one, I like that for the most part worldwide, where just people have a good relationship with Canada. And Canadians are welcomed really nicely. Like it's awesome. I've actually heard stories of where Americans would put a Canada flag on their backpack, for example, so that people would think they're Canadians rather than Americans. I think that's interesting. I'm not sure how true it is, but I think it's interesting. So I think that our overall hospitality, our politeness, I think that being recognized is awesome. I love that. And something else on the opposite end of the politeness that folks don't know when it comes to Canadians is that Canadians are crazy good with war. In World War II, they had Canadian troops that were not leading, but they were doing many of these special ops ones, and they were doing some crazy stuff. Like it's nuts. So I think it's interesting that we have that combination of politeness and hospitality, while we also have that capability of going to war and being able and showing and people being able to recognize like, whoa, Canadians are crazy. So it's interesting. I like that dichotomy, the politeness to the war aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, my final question for you has to do with a legacy, my friend. So, if I told you I was throwing you a lifetime achievement party, and I spent $1 million on the party, and the only thing I would ask you to do at the party is have the people who know you best, your best friends, give a lifetime achievement toast about you, my friend. What do you think you would want them to say, and how do you want your legacy to be defined both personally and professionally, my friend?
That's a really cool question. Okay. Um, it's interesting. There's many things I would want to hear at a lifetime achievement party that I would also want to be said at my funeral.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So some of them, lifetime achievement award, the party would be a couple things. So a couple things I would have accomplished. I would have accomplished a honorary degree for my work in society. That's something I think is certainly possible. It's definitely possible, and I think it'd be really cool. And so that, because I really want to expand this work, and a couple of things that I once said is that I was the exact same person in any situation, that I led with love, that or that I lead with love, because I'm not reading my funeral one. I'm reading my, I'm still alive for this one. I would want those points. And then those would be the main ones. And then I'd
Yeah,
probably go back to work the next day.
yeah, absolutely. And, Kyle, something you said sparked me to ask one final question. And sometimes I do this thing where I call it one final thing in my podcast. And I've been looking at you, buddy, and you've got a very interesting sense of style, and the beard gives you a certain level of distinction, my friend. So I'm curious, where does your sense of style come from, and do you use your beard at all as a competitive advantage in life, my friend?
You know what? I think the beard works as a competitive advantage in wintertime the most.
See,
I
I
go
just told my
outside.
mother the same thing this morning.
Exactly.
This morning, the beard acts as insulation, doesn't it, in the winter?
Yeah, exactly. And my overall sense of style is, it comes from mostly usefulness. So for example, like this is a different shirt. I have a similar shirt to this, however, uh, three other ones that are long sleeve similar to this, and I have the exact same t-shirt in 12 different colors. So, and then my hats, I have three hats that are similar to this. So similar, three different hats, similar kind of vibe, similar themes, still a scally cap. And it's a lot of its comfort and utility. If I can move in it, if I can run in it, if I can jump, and if I'm comfortable, and if I can handle most environments, then I'm good.
Well, Kyle, I think it was Kelly Ripa who said price per wear when you go shopping, right? If you can wear it multiple times in multiple different ways, the price tag doesn't matter, right? No, I'm only kidding, but that's, that's okay, my friend. But tell me, if people want to get connected with you, Kyle, what's the best way they can do that?
Cool. My website is clarityconsultant.ca, and my socials are Dapper Dude Kyle, DapperDudeKyle. And Instagram is the fastest place that I can respond. So if anyone has any questions or anything, they can shoot me a message there and I'll get back to them pretty quick.
Fabulous. Well, Kyle, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing to really help us gain more mental clarity in life, my friend. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation on this cold Canadian Saturday. And go play in the snow, okay? And I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Have yourself an awesome day.